Hello, this is Margot Rose of Body Aware Grieving, and I'd like to discuss today the idea of how to better heal from grief or loss environments that there has been more than one very strong emotion happening at the same time. An example is something that's happening right now in Oakland, California, where people are very saddened over a recent murder of a Mexican American, a very, very popular and prominent Mexican American businessman, Jesus Campos, was recently murdered 2 days after speaking out about gang violence at a community meeting. He was murdered, and witnesses observed what they thought was two black men having shot him. And so right now, if you look at the situation happening here in Oakland, there's a lot of people expressing rage and sadness at the same time. But if you go to some of the local news outlets and you read the comments that people are making on this story, you'll see that there's a lot of rage happening and a lot of racial inflammatory kind of comments that are going on. And it seems to me that people's experience of sadness and loss is being eclipsed by this feeling of anger. And that's really, if you look at the comments where people are pretty much exclusively expressing how they're feeling. There's a lot of environments like this where it's complicated and there's more than one layer of emotion happening at the same time. So my suggestion is always from a body-aware grieving perspective to figure out what's happening to your body under each of these emotions and how to address and respond to each of these emotions, ideally as separately as possible. So, for example, rage is a very energizing and call to action kind of emotion. So if someone's having a lot of rage or anger over something, they would probably respond better if they can release some of that in a safe, effective manner. Exercise can be a terrific way to do that. If you were upset in this manner, you might want to choose, say, a cardio activity that doesn't have a lot of complications to it. You wouldn't want to do a really dangerous activity like rock climbing, but you might want to do something like running, punching a punching bag with some boxing gloves on. If you were hiking, a really strong uphill hike might get you to release some of that initial level of anger. A lot of the cardio machines at the gym, even, just to blow off some steam is what might be necessary before you can reveal some of these other layers that are a little quieter and softer, like some sadness. Some situations involve, guilt or sadness along with some of their grief. So some of these slower, quieter emotions can get buried under some of these more inflammatory ones. So if you can take off some of that initial level of grief by blowing off some of that steam, then you can address this other set of emotions in more detail and eventually create a better and more complete healing. So when people are sad, they might just need some quiet, some companionship and intimacy with other people who are sharing stories with them or sharing some of the same emotion they're experiencing. When people are sad, they're often moved to be generous. They're moved often to volunteer. You hear stories about Japan or about Haiti having emergencies, and people's response to try to feel better with the feelings that they're having of loss is to be very generous in different ways, either with their time or with their money, and somehow wanting to be contributive. So it's so different. The response to each of those sets of emotions is so different. But in an environment where someone's feeling many, many different conflicted emotions, my recommendation is to take it layer by layer, to say, I'm having this kind of emotion. How do I address that and relieve some of those symptoms and feelings? And then hopefully, like an onion, bit by bit, you can go down until you get to all the different layers of need and feeling that ultimately can be addressed until a person can have a more complete healing from the whole circumstance of what's happened. But to take it all on at once is really complicated. Looking at, for example, some of Oakland right now, it seems like people have completely lost this sense of sadness by being overcome by some of these feelings that are more on the surface and a little more prominent of anger. So I'm hoping that goes more smoothly here locally. But there's a lot of circumstances like that, and the more you can address each part of a complicated environment, I think the more thorough people are going to be able to move on to their next, just heal better and move on to the next experiences they're going to have in their lives. So just a little bit of an introduction. I know I say that a lot, but each of these is very complicated circumstances, and these are just the first podcasts per topic. I'm hoping to go back and forth a little bit with comments, with people giving their opinion, and we can go deeper into each of these topics that I'm just sort of lightly touching on in the audio podcast. So if you have opinions or comments, please let me know. And other than that, I'm wishing you the best. This is Margot Rose. Take care.